Many people still view ADHD as a continuous inability to sit still, a mind destined to chase every passing butterfly without ever landing. That image ignores the agonizing friction of the ADHD experience. For many, starting a mundane task creates a tangible sensation of physical resistance, as if the brain is missing the gears required to engage with something unstimulating. When that same brain encounters a high-stimulation activity, like an intricate comic book or a complex game, the world disappears. The surrounding room, the sound of their name, and even the sensation of hunger vanish into a single, unshakable point of interest. This creates a paradox. A brain that seems easily distracted is actually struggling with a dysregulation of attention. The engine runs at high speed, but the driver cannot reliably choose when to shift into gear. Maintaining this level of intensity comes with a biological price. In the zone, the brain deprioritizes survival signals, leading people to spend hours without water, food, or sleep until their physical energy is entirely depleted. Time blindness accelerates this exhaustion. Because the internal clock fails to track the passing of hours, a 10-minute break can easily morph into a 6-hour obsession before the person realizes they have lost half a day. The resulting burnout is often severe. Missed deadlines and strained social relationships accumulate as the brain's inability to disengage forces it to ignore everything outside the immediate focus bubble. Without active management, this laser-like attention functions as a trap. It consumes the person's time and health, regardless of their actual priorities or long-term goals. Initiation requires a chemical fuel, dopamine. It acts as the brain's motivation spark, signaling a task is worth the energy. In the ADHD prefrontal cortex, this chemical operates at a chronic deficit. There is simply less fuel to drive this start mechanism for unexciting tasks. When faced with a boring chore, the brain searches for a dopamine reward to start. Finding none, it stalls, creating the feeling of being stuck, even when wanting to be productive. This biological shortage explains why willpower often fails. The brain is effectively trying to start a fire without a spark. The dynamic changes when the brain finds a high-stimulation task. Activities like gaming or creative problem-solving provide the instant, constant feedback that the ADHD brain craves. That stimulation triggers a massive surge of dopamine, flooding the prefrontal cortex, and finally giving the brain the chemical fuel it has been lacking. The brain responds to this sudden supply by locking onto the source. To keep the dopamine flowing, it blocks out all competing stimuli, creating a state where nothing else in the environment seems to exist. This makes hyperfocus a defensive chemical reaction. The brain builds a wall around its only source of reward juice, refusing to disengage even when they need to move on. While you cannot change the underlying wiring of your brain, you can manipulate your environment to manufacture the chemical conditions needed to focus. Interest boosters provide a way to bypass the dopamine deficit. By gamifying a boring task or using specific high-tempo focus music, you add the missing stimulation required to trigger the brain's engagement. Body doubling creates a similar effect through social accountability. Working in the presence of another person provides an external anchor, making it easier for the brain to stay tethered to the current task. When directed with intent, this intensity allows for a level of repetition others find impossible. Thomas Edison demonstrated this by performing thousands of iterations on a single invention, locking into a problem until he found a solution. By engineering these triggers, you move from being a victim of random focus to an active manager of your attention. Managing a brain with compromised internal brakes requires external guardrails. You need physical systems to act as the stop switch that your chemistry cannot provide. Tools like the Pomodoro technique create an external clock. By forcing a physical interruption every 25 to 50 minutes, The timer breaks the time blindness loop before the body reaches the point of exhaustion. A hyperfocus trigger checklist serves as a mandatory pre-flight protocol. Before diving into a task, you verify that you have water, food, and a set alarm to ensure you have an exit plan for when the focus ends. Today's modern high performers utilize these exact strategies. Richard Branson built the Virgin Empire by delegating mundane logistics he knew his brain would resist, while using structured schedules to keep his intense interests aligned with his business goals. Hyperfocus is a neutral biological mechanism. When left to run wild, it leads to burnout. But when constrained by external systems, it provides the sustained energy required to achieve long-term goals.